Hi everyone, and welcome to yet another really special Talking Insomnia episode. We have Kreuza here from with us today. So welcome.
Thank you. Hi. How are you?
Did I say it okay?
Yes.
All right, very very well. Now, for those of you who are watching and don't know our guest today, then I just want to say that we talked about doing this episode when you actually expressed some interest in becoming a coach, and then I was like, hey, you would like to share your story, and you said yes, so I'm glad you're here.
Thank you.
And one thing, just for myself, we shouldn't forget to talk about the somniphobia, because I really think that's something that will help the community. But with that said, tell us in your words, how did it all start?
Well, I've gone through insomnia actually twice. Chronic insomnia. The first time was in 2013. It was actually after a very close person of mine passed away, and as you know, when something like that happens, you're up, you're thinking, you're processing, you're, you know, mourning, and so yeah, so I just so it started just by being in a really bad mental state, being kind of depressed for a bit, and not being able to sleep. And I had so prior to that I had never experienced insomnia. I mean, occasional sleepless nights, but nothing like that. And then after about a week of not being able to sleep, I started thinking, well, there's something wrong with me, because I was in my early 20s, and I just thought this is not normal. I didn't know what to do. I had never heard of anyone who had gone through that. Um, so anyway, I went to CBT. I got that sorted out. I had never, after a couple of months, I got that sorted out, and it kind of stuck with me that, oh, I'm just this person who has a sleeping problem now. Even after I was able to sleep, I kind of still thought of myself as somebody who just struggles with that, because I had never met anybody who had struggled with that to that degree. But I had never experienced somniphobia. I didn't experience somniphobia at that time. So yeah, in 2013 I didn't experience. So but in 2020, so last year, 2022, is I again experienced chronic insomnia.
Actually, sorry, let me just pause there for a second. This first episode in 2013,
Yeah.
how like difficult was that? Was it more like a nuisance? It was kind of annoying, or was it like really kind of intense insomnia
No,
back
no, it
then?
was very intense because I had no idea what was going on. It was my first time experiencing something like so I first went to the doctor. I didn't know that there was such a thing as a sleep therapist even. The doctor offered just sleeping pills, which I took Ambien, and it didn't do anything for me. I would take it, I would be up all night, or I would sleep for maybe 2, 3, 4 hours, and then but it felt like I was in a it didn't feel like I didn't wake up rested. um yeah, and I would jerk myself awake all the time anyway. But what I was doing wrong actually was that because I was not sleeping, I was spending too much time in bed attempting to sleep. And I also took, I was feeling really anxious, and they gave me, sorry, a Xanax. So I took that as well, which also didn't really help. I think that the anxiety was just too much for those medications to do anything. So yeah, I mean, it was really bad. It wasn't a nuisance. I mean, I had to leave my job. Um, I was very scared. I didn't know if it was going to get better. It was tough for me and my family because they were going through it with me. So yeah, no, it was way more than a nuisance.
Oh yeah, I can hear that. And this was several, like roughly, like how many months was this kind of intense,
This
difficult?
started, I actually remember, it was after my friend's birthday in October of 2013. And then I started to feel better around February of the following year.
Exactly.
Yeah. So I think I started therapy in November. Yeah, November 15th. I don't know why I remember that, but it was November 15th, my first appointment. Um, and then I think it took like 3 months or so for me to start sleeping again, kind of
Wow.
regularly, but still I would have many sleepless nights.
Got it. And this was a CBTi program. Was it like in
CBTi.
person?
Yeah. Yeah.
But now for you, you found this. It seems like quite helpful.
I did. Yeah, I did. I was doing so my brother actually was helping me do research. We didn't know what CBTi was. We had never heard of it. We didn't know there were sleep therapists existed. But of course, when you're delving into it, because out of necessity, then we came across CBTi, and you know, that was kind of like my last resort because I had tried so many other things. I had gone to another therapist. He actually kind of made things worse, to be honest. He didn't know what this was. He you know, so his advice, he's like, oh, you just have to deal with it. It's just part of your life now, you know. And so I'm like, that's unacceptable. I don't know how to. I can't live like this. And but this other therapist, he actually he brought me back. Like he gave me these CBTi, the protocol, you know, which you know, and we didn't do so much of the other stuff that I did this time around with acceptance. We didn't go over that, but he just said, go to bed at this time, wake up at this. It was very mechanical, but it worked at the time. It was what I needed, I guess, at the time.
Exactly. Okay. Very, very nice to hear that. So, so that, you know, that fizzled down, and then let me ask you this question, from like early 2014 then,
Mm-hmm.
and until, you know, 2022,
Mm-hmm.
that's how many years? That's like 8 years, right?
Yeah.
You know, math is so difficult to do when you're thinking of it. But anyway, it's quite many years there. And during those years, would you say, you know, you never thought about sleep, you were totally fine, or were you still kind of, was it kind of lurking in the back of your mind? You were a little apprehensive.
Well, it wasn't. You know, it was still. I always thought of myself as somebody who had a problem with sleep after that, but it didn't take over my life. I was still able to travel, work, do everything. It didn't take over my life. There were periods where I was sleeping fine, never thought about it. There were periods where I would have some sleepless nights, and it was a nuisance, but it wasn't it wasn't like a major. I didn't let it take over my life. So I would have maybe a few nights that I'm like, I'm not sleeping okay. However, I always had this fear in the back of my mind that, oh, what if it becomes so bad again? Like I was
Yeah.
afraid of that happening. I'm like, I don't want to go through that. So, but yeah, it never got to the point where it was like it the first time until last year.
And one more question there. During these years when it was, you know, a nuisance, it kind of flared up a little bit, and
Mhm.
it's settled down again. Did you have any type of, like, you know, sleep efforts or like rituals or like things like that? I have to do this so it doesn't come back. Anything like that?
No,
Okay.
no, I just no.
Okay. Good to know. So
Yeah.
so with that said, yeah, go ahead. Take us to 2022 and what happened then?
So 2022, I was living in Prague. I moved there. I was by myself, foreign country, didn't know anybody. I was working a lot. I was really working a lot. My job was, I guess, kind of cerebral. I had to always be, you know, I'm always having to kind of like think on my feet, like really, really fast, and create a lot of lessons for my students. I was teaching, and so I found it to be stressful, and I was overworked, and also I just had no social life. So I think, and missing my family because my family was still in the States. So just, you know, I didn't realize that I was as stressed as I was because I was always doing something. I mean, I was distracting. I mean, I had to work, but I was also distracting myself. And so I think it just reached a point, like a culmination point after almost a year of doing that, where I just, you know, it really started in the most simple way. Like I just couldn't sleep one night. That's really how it started. And and then that night turned into 2 nights, and then suddenly it just like spiraled out of control from there. I do want to mention one thing though, and maybe this is relevant, I don't know, but it might help somebody. I was making a dietary change, um because I had so much work. I wanted to always have energy. So I was drinking more caffeine than usual. I'm not sure if that's anything that has to do with it, but I was also trying out this keto diet, which I since have stopped. But I think that maybe that might have given me like too much extra energy because I remember just feeling like super energetic and not being able to fall asleep and waking up really early. Like in the, you know, at first I'm like, oh, that's great. But then later on, it just kind of spiraled out of control. So I think that might have maybe been a trigger, but definitely not the cause.
Yeah. And I just, just to contextualize from our audience, like again, this is just a conversation, like and I think it's so valuable to hear everybody's like thoughts, stories, etc. But to me, when I hear that story, to me it becomes like you're in this a place of like stress, you were kind of isolated, you're distracting yourself, and maybe the intent with starting a keto diet was somehow to like escape some kind of internal threat, like maybe you didn't want to feel tired, maybe you didn't want to feel this way. And to me it's sort of like when we do anything with sort of some type of intent like that, it becomes like this effort, and it can easily lead to us being like more anxious if we try to escape anxiety, like, or it amplifies our emotions. So to me, it can be like not necessarily the exact details of like what happens in our body when we change our diet, but a lot with our intent that creates like that hyperarousal and wakefulness. Anyway, that is just a little comment from me, but you continue your story, Kreuza.
Sure. I mean, I did physically feel just more hyper after changing my. I mean, maybe I'm just sensitive to, I've to different foods or different diets. I don't know, but I did feel that that had an effect on my body. I mean,
Yeah.
So yeah. So anyway, um, yeah. Like the first. I actually remember the first 3 nights I switched. I went from the bed to the couch. I'm like, maybe it's just my room. I don't know. Like you start thinking. And so I went to the couch, and I was like dozing off a little, but I'd wake up super tired. Um, and then I'm like stressed. Oh, now I have to teach and have to socialize, and I mean, not socialize, but you just have to be available for other people and provide a good lesson for them. And so that was really stressful. And I'm thinking that if I'm not well rested, that I'm not performing, at my best for my students. So that also was stressing me out, and so that gave me more pressure to sleep or to sleep well. And anyway, I don't even know. I think it was about 2 weeks later that I'm like, okay, I was. What was happening first is I was falling asleep, but I was waking up really early in the morning, and then I couldn't fall back asleep, and I was waking up like in this state of panic almost. Um, and it was weird too because I would sleep and it would feel like, let's say I slept 5 hours, it would feel like maybe an hour or two, and I had no dreams. It's like I was in a coma. I didn't remember any. I mean, it was strange. So that kind of scared me because I hadn't experienced that before. Um, and so then, after that just kept happening. I don't even know for how long. Like I can't remember now. Maybe like a month or something, where that was just every day, and I was tired constantly. So then I was just thinking, well, I can't. I mean, I can't keep doing this. Like I just can't keep going like having this every day. So I ended up quitting my job. Like it's 3 in the morning. I just wrote an email and I just said I can't do it because I was so nervous about the next day having to teach again. But I'm like, maybe if I eliminate this stress, then I can maybe fall asleep. I don't know.
And this was I have two questions really quickly. One was when you had that first like the sleepless night.
Yeah.
It sounded to me as if you didn't react so strongly
No, I did
initially,
not.
right?
No, no.
Okay. So it wasn't like even during these like this first stretch here, it wasn't like, oh my God, like that insomnia from 2013 is back. That it didn't really wasn't like that.
No, it wasn't at all because when I moved to the Czech Republic initially, I was having it took me about 2 weeks to reset my sleep schedule because of the time. It's a 6-hour time difference. So, so I just chalked it up as, oh, I'm just adjusting to the new time schedule. That's all. And I had prior to that, because I had traveled back and forth to Europe a few times, and I had a couple of weeks where I wasn't sleeping well. Well, like it wasn't that big of a deal. So I just figured it's gonna fix on its own.
Yeah. But then when it didn't really fix on its own, and you had this kind of like, it sounds like what we call like hyper sleep, where you're not sure if you slept or not. It's like time just skips ahead, like these things. Now you're starting to get worried, and was it kind of in a panic that you're at 3 a.m. at night that you're like something has to change, or had you already thought about that? I think I maybe need to stop my job, and then
I think it was very impulsive. It was kind of in a panic, yeah.
Got it.
And actually, it was after that things became worse even. And what you're not supposed to do is change your whole life because of your sleep, which is what I did. Because, well, I don't know if I still don't know if that was the right thing to do, actually, because I don't know how what would have happened otherwise. But yeah, so after I quit my job, and because I had known about CBT, I said I will focus on CBT now. And actually, my parents had came over to to help out. So yeah, I started on my own doing CBT. And well, so maybe so I know the technique, but I think that when there's nobody else accountable and you're just doing it on your own, it's not as effective. At least that's what I found. So I would set a schedule for myself. I calculated how many hours I'm sleeping. I mean, there were nights that I wasn't sleeping at all. Um, but yeah, I think you're supposed to be in bed for like 4.5 hours minimum. So I was doing that, and somehow, actually, that made things worse. I went from being able to sleep a little bit to I was just up all night. And I think now it's because I was hyper focused on the fact that, well, now this problem is back. Like I'm back to where I was 8 years ago. And
Yeah,
yeah.
I just have a sorry if I'm interrupting here, but I think you brought up something that is so helpful to see, and I'm just going to give my take, and then I would love to hear your take on this. But I think what you said is really so true. Like when the second time around, there was nobody else with you. You were sort of just like following that what you said, like the mechanics. You were following the mechanic of CBTi, right?
Yeah.
But the first time around, what I believe is that the mechanics aren't necessarily what really help. But what you said that the first time around you had spent like your whole day like in bed trying to sleep, and when somebody then tells you like, no, you should spend much less time in bed. What I think helps isn't so much that it builds like the strong sleep drive that makes you sleep, but rather that, oh, you stop chasing sleep. You're trying less to sleep. Oh, that could be really helpful. And you have somebody that I would say, to me, it's not so much holding you accountable to do the right things, but more like you have somebody you may trust, you believe in, and you're like, they know what they're doing. I'm just going to follow them. And then we're sort of delegating. We're like, I'm able to trust them. If I just do what they tell me, everything will be fine. And then again, it leads to effortlessness because we're no longer trying. And to me, that's really the magic. But then the second time around, it's different. Now you're just doing the mechanics. You don't really feel super confident because you're kind of doing it on your own. You have nobody to talk to.
Yeah.
Things go very differently. That's how I interpret it. But what are your thoughts on that?
100%. When you're already in this state and you're trying to get yourself out of it on your own without help, yeah, you're not going to do the best job because you're already like scared. You're already not thinking properly. So that's what happened. Anyway, I don't even know. I think it started getting really bad around May of last year, and it persisted where I really wasn't sleeping. I mean, if I was, it was like micro sleeps. Up until, I'm gonna say July or June, maybe June. Let's say like a month and a half, something like that, where it was just getting progressively worse. And
So for a month and a half, you basically, your experience was that you either did not sleep at all or you slept like minimal, like
yeah,
a microsecond.
yeah. And then I decided, well, okay, I need help. So I reached out. I reached out to you, but I also reached out to, and I forgot his name now. It was another sleep therapist.
Oh, was it online?
Yeah.
Was it Martin Reed or Trevor Youngquist?
Martin Reed was later.
Yeah.
But it
those
was
are
somebody, yeah, I did. So he was awesome, but it was another guy that I had. So before Martin Reed, I found someone else. And so it was this, I forgot his name now. But to be honest, and maybe I'm sure that he's great. He was great for other people. I saw his testimonials, which, people liked him, but he just wasn't the right one for me because he was hyper focused the, um, on the mechanics, like go to bed at this time, wake up at this time, calculate everything. And when I would, have questions or when I wanted some flexibility on that, he didn't seem to think that that was a good idea. And so actually that made me even more paranoid about being awake at a certain time, which would keep me up at night. Um, even more so. So I had him for about a month, and then actually it was during that period that the somniphobia started. So I stopped with him, and that's when I found Martin Reed, which and he, I mean, I really thought he was incredible, and his advice was, and the way, his compassion and the way that he would explain what I'm supposed to be doing and answering all my questions in such a compassionate way, that is what I found the most helpful. Just that humanity having with them versus just somebody telling me, well, go to bed here. I mean, that didn't help me so much.
Wow. Yeah, I'm so glad you found him. He's great. He's a personal friend and
Yeah.
incredible educator and everything. But just people in the audience now, one thing that they may be curious about or wonder about, like, okay, Kreuza said the somniphobia started at this point.
Yeah.
What was that? Can you tell us more about that?
Yeah. Can I just say one thing before? One of the things that I was doing a lot while I was awake was I was like bombarding myself with insomnia videos all night, which, if anyone is going, I mean, I understand the impulse and the need to want to do that, but it's really not helpful. So if you can just keep yourself from doing that, that's one thing that I would definitely recommend. But anyway, so the way that
Sorry, I have to just sneak in here because people might wonder, like, what do you mean insomnia videos? Are you talking about like our kind of success stories and our content, or other things?
Not necessarily. I just mean it's okay to watch success stories, and that gave me hope, and so I recommend that. But videos of people complaining about how they can't sleep, things that give you more fear and make you feel worse. Your videos actually gave me hope, because it's one of your videos that got me, that I met somebody in your channel that helped me overcome the somniphobia. So that's fine. What I'm talking about is being so overly engrossed in insomnia content on on YouTube, or just on Google, whatever. That's what I'm talking about, because that's what I did a lot.
Got it. Yeah, thank you. Yeah, absolutely.
So the thing with this is that it starts so suddenly that there's seemingly no cause, because the somniphobia really just started with a thought. That's it. Like, I was just, well, you're up all night, you're thinking you're scared, you're the only one awake, it seems like. And so you're thinking too much. And one of the thoughts that I was having is, when you're just like trying to fall asleep and you're sort of aware that you're about to become unconscious.
Yeah.
So I was really thinking about that a lot. Like, oh, I'm about to just be unconscious now. My body's just exposed to anything can happen to me. And even talking about it now, it's like it's bringing back those feelings that I was getting at night. And everything kind of seems more intense at night for some reason. So yeah, I had this thought. I'm like, okay, I'm like about to become unconscious. I have no control of what happens to my body. And so it went from that one random thought that I had one random night to it spiraled to every single night. And then it became that I was thinking about that every single day, every minute of the day. And I was thinking, what if something bad happens to me? And it was so irrational. I'm like, what if somebody sneaks into my house and chops off my legs? Like, that's one of the things that I was worrying about. And it's so irrational, but it was the thought that it just seemed so real to me. And just like being unconscious and not being able to defend myself if something were to happen. And so that's how the insomniphobia started.
Got it. So at this point, would you say that you're like, again, for the audience here, like we talk about insomnia becoming a struggle that happens when we're scared of not sleeping, but now somniphobia is like when we're scared of sleeping in a way. We're scared of being unconscious. We're scared of that. So would you say did that sort of like take over now, or was it both at the same time?
It took over. The somniphobia took over. It was way worse. I wish that I had just insomnia at that point. I mean, the somniphobia was the worst thing I had ever experienced. I was incredibly depressed, and scared and anxious. I mean, just really, it was. I have to say, it was the worst time of my life. I mean, I really didn't think I was going to come out of that one. I'm like, just this is it. Like, there's no. I was so deeply engrossed in this state of being that I'm like, there's no way that I'm ever going to come out of it. It was just too intense. So yeah, and I mean, my dad was nervous and scared, and he didn't know how to help me. So he just wanted me to get at least some rest. So he was, he gave me like a sleeping pill. And in fact, that made things worse, because when that didn't work, I'm like, well, I don't even have this to fall back on. Like, even pills don't help me now. So
Yeah.
I felt completely helpless.
Wow. And you're still in Prague now, and
No,
it's
actually,
like,
I'm now in Albania. I think so in June or July is when I went to Albania. I quit my job in May, and then we went to Albania because I quit my job. I couldn't stay there anymore. My visa expired.
got it. I hear. So you're
Yeah.
now in Albania, uh, and you things are really, really intense now. And basically, yeah, just tell it what happened next.
Well, that's when I was looking through your channel, actually. And I found, and I forgive me, I can't remember her name.
Malena.
Sorry?
Malena.
Milena. Yes, I found Milena. I'm sorry, I'm gonna back up a little bit. I also reached out to Martin Reed. So I have Martin Reed and I have Milena. And so Martin Reed, I mean, the protocol is the same. CBTi is the same, but the way that he explained it to me was the most helpful from anybody, because he was very much into flexibility. He explained so many things to me about insomnia, about the causes of it, he also encouraged me, because I wasn't working, I had all day. So he's like, go hiking, do this, do things, don't just stay and like simmer in your misery all day, because that's gonna make things worse. And he also explained the importance of acceptance, which I do want to talk about. But also Milena, she had experienced somniphobia just like I was experiencing. And so having somebody who had the exact same experience and validate that experience, because nobody else, I mean, it's such a rare thing. That made me feel so much better, because she exactly had the same thing I was having and she came out of it. So I'm like, okay, it's possible. Like, it's possible to come out of it. And so I gotta say, she really helped me a lot. And I have to thank her. And I did thank her. Yeah, for being available. So what I found that was the main thing that helped me come out of my somniphobia was acceptance. And at first, I'm thinking to myself, how do you accept such an unacceptable thing? How can you accept it? But it's not about apathy. It's not accepting and saying that, oh, this is just my life now, because of course that's not your life. It's accepting that this is what you're going through at the moment, and just letting that anxiety kind of just sit with you for a little bit, and you're not distracting yourself. You're not trying so hard to like get out of it or be logical and logically work yourself out of it, because it's not going to work. You can't eliminate an emotion through logic. It's never worked for me, at least. So what I found that was the most helpful is I would just lay in bed, and I did this multiple times a day for like a month or two. I'd lay in bed, I'd have my hand on my chest, and I would just let the anxiety flow through me as often as I needed to. Of course, I did the hiking, I went out, I started to, do more things physically, which helped, and be out in the sunshine a lot. Actually, I had the luxury of doing that at the time. And also, I think Martin is the one that taught me this particular one. He told me to, was it, I don't know, I think it was Martin, but basically you have a thought, like you're having a scary thought, and you acknowledge it, this thought that you're having, and you just kind of like, I guess visualize it flowing out of your head or something. Like, it's just, that's what I did. I literally pictured that there was like a window opening up in my head, like my brain, I don't know. And I would just visualize this thought flowing out of me. And I gotta tell you, I did this at least 100 times a day. I did this every time the thought popped in my head. And I'm like, am I gonna have to keep doing this like for the rest of my life? But eventually over time, the thought was, it was like coming less and less frequently. But yeah, but it was work. I mean, you really do have to tend to it, because in the beginning, like you're going to be having these thoughts all the time, and you do have to tend to them when they come. You can't just suppress them.
Wow. Wow, but slowly things are starting to change as you're learning about acceptance, you're getting more educated, and um, yeah, I actually don't have a specific question. Just to take us further. What happens next?
So, well, I mean, so let's see. We're like, let's say we're like in July at this point. It took about, I mean, it took about a month and a half, month and a half, for me to start noticing that I was getting better, which which I didn't expect. And I even told Martin, I said, will you be available? Like, if I need you for 3 months, 4 months, 6 months, I don't know. And so him saying yes was also a comfort to me. But yeah, I mean, the thing is also one thing that helped with my brother. I would call him because at first, when you're going through this, you kind of want to isolate yourself. That's at least my instinct. But it's not the thing that's going to help. So I called my brother, and so I would talk to him, and I would explain to him what's going on, and he would just comfort me. Like, it was just nice to have someone to talk to, family. And so, yeah, so that also helped. But yeah, I think about a month and a half later or so, just with me. Actually, I do want to tell a quick story. Um, One morning I had not slept, maybe like 2 hours, and my dad wanted to go hiking. And I'm like, no way. Like, I feel terrible. I don't have the energy. But I'm like, no, Martin said, do it. Like, don't let this prevent you from doing what you were going to do anyway, or what you want to do. So I changed my mind. I went hiking, and about halfway up the hill, I'm having terrible anxiety, and like my heart's racing. Just I'm having these thoughts. But then as I keep pushing myself further, and I'm getting physically like tired, I noticed that my heart's not racing anymore. The thoughts are pretty much dissipating at this point, or like they're not as intense as they were in the morning. And so actually after that, I would be the one to initiate the hikes, because I noticed that being active actually really did help, especially being out in the sunshine. Which is why I want to stress that I know that the impulse, or the yeah, like what you want to do.
Intent,
Sorry.
intent, maybe.
The intent is to stay home and just because you're tired, but really you should be doing you have to. The thing is, you really have to push yourself. Like, it's not easy. It's really like, it's getting up when you're so tired is not easy. Going hiking or going to work, it's not easy. Socializing when you feel like a zombie is not easy. But really, it's what's going to help you get past the insomnia or the somniphobia, whatever you're going through.
Yeah, absolutely. Listen, I want to ask you something else. Um, you were part of, like, you joined our insomnia immunity program at some point
I did.
too, right?
Yeah, I was a
But
part of it for quite a while.
right, but that was also when you were kind of in the thick of it, when you were back in the Czech Republic, right?
Yeah, Czech Republic and in Albania for a little while. I don't remember for how long now.
Got it, got it. And how did you find that experience? Was that helpful to you, or was it like
Was
difficult with the group session, or?
if I can be honest, it was helpful. But I think because I'm a bit of like a empathic person, seeing other people's struggles kind of made me feel really bad for them, and so I want to read success stories, but I don't really necessarily want to read people saying that, oh, I've had this for this many months and I'm still just as bad. I mean, because for me, it made me feel bad. Other people might see it as, okay, I'm not the only one. Like, I can see other people that relate to me, but for me, it just wasn't very helpful. Um, just personally,
Yeah,
I want to talk to the person who's been there, who's gone already through it, and is on
yeah.
the other side. Like, that's just what works for me personally, but everyone's different.
Yeah, totally. And it's great to share that, because that's exactly like you said. A lot of people find it difficult to be in that, like, group session, because of the exactly same reason, the
Mhm.
reasons you share. So it's just helpful for the community to know that. So they can choose whatever is going to be most suitable for them.
Yeah.
Um, okay, so now we're kind of in the end of summer, or end of summer there, and things are starting to become easier. And from then on, would you say you sort of like little by little things got easier, or was it still somewhat of a bumpy path going forward from there?
Well, that's the thing. It's not a linear progression. You're not every day getting better. You're getting better, and then you take a few steps back, and you think, "Oh no, am I going back to square one?" But you just have to keep doing what's working. What got you to have that little progress to begin with. And you get discouraged, but that's why you have a coach, like you have you, or you have Milena, or somebody like Mike Martin, and they just tell you like that's normal, that's expected, and then you just have to keep going. And so that's what I did. And actually, having a little bit of progress help me, because I'm like, okay, I'm getting better. Like, I'm better than I was a month ago, and that's really good. That I got one full night's sleep. I haven't had that in months. So yeah, so just having that little hope helps you keep going, and it shows you that the work I'm doing, it's having some effect.
Yeah, well,
Yeah.
so nicely said. And I just want to kind of emphasize two things you said. That as a coach, like I feel like one of the, I don't know, half of what I do is actually just telling people, oh, this is normal. We've seen this so many times before. This is nothing strange or unusual. So yeah, and I think just knowing that is so helpful. But also what you said about like looking back a month, or looking back 3 months, or looking back like often what I see with students is that they like comparing like to last night, or comparing to some goal they have or something like that. But not really seeing that if you look back a month, or look 2 months back or something like that, you were super scared, you were bullied, you're puzzled, you had no clue what's going on, you were like completely like coming apart. And now things are not super easy, but they're different from if you're looking back. So looking back a little further, that can be really helpful, right?
I actually want to give some credit to you, because you wrote a book that I read. I downloaded it and I read it, and oh, I forgot. I sorry, like I actually forgot the name of the book now.
I have most of them back behind me. Is it one of these?
Set It and Forget It. Yeah. So I read that, and I read it like really fast. I mean, because I was just reading all night, and so the information was there, but maybe it's just, again, me, the way that I learn things. I needed someone, even though the information's in the book, and I was armed with that information, I still needed to have somebody tell it to me for some reason. Like, I still needed to have somebody guide me through it. I guess it was just too much for me to like do it on my own. But what helped was that I already knew the information, and so having somebody on top of that kind of walk me through it, it was really what I needed. So, I mean, that's just the way that I work. I think I'm the kind of person who, and I really am this kind of person who, I need someone to explain things to me in a step-by-step I mean, even if I'm starting a new job, like I don't learn arbitrary. I need someone to just tell me step 1, step 2, step 3. Like that's how I work, at least. So that was really helpful.
I'm so glad you found it and that it was helpful. And, just
Mm-hmm.
to contextualize a little bit on what you said, I think oftentimes like information itself can be really helpful, but sometimes we're like, oh, but how does am I getting it right? Or like, how does this apply to me? Am I contextualizing the right way, or et cetera, et cetera? So just having somebody tell us like, yeah, you're seeing it very clearly, and things like that can be really, really helpful. But yeah, and now big picture, or this is more like, I'm going to ask you a question, and this is more because this question comes up from the community so often. And it would say, the question would be something like, when would you say that like the insomnia and the somniphobia was like behind you?
So yeah, I still consider myself to have. So after Martin and after Milena, I stopped with them after I was sleeping well, relatively regularly. But I still had. I mean, the thoughts didn't just go away. I mean, they still crept up daily. It's just that I had a better way of managing them now. And then I came back to the States. It was September. I came back to the States early September, and I had nowhere to stay, so I was staying with my brother. So, and I gotta say, he has a little dog. So I was spending the day with just by myself, me and this dog. And I really have to credit the dog for putting me in such a fun and playful mood, which I hadn't felt in so long. And I'm sorry about the light, which I hadn't felt in so long, that it kind of got me out of the insomnia and the somniphobia. I mean, I was already like 80% better, but then hanging out with this cute little dog all day, and she would sleep. Oh, and right. So here's one more thing, because my biggest fear was that something bad was going to happen. I'm so sorry. Yeah, my biggest fear was that something was going to happen. while I'm unconscious. And this dog was so, I mean, every time she heard something, she would bark. So it kind of made me feel like I don't have to be, I can just relax because if anything happens, she'll bark. so, so I have to say that that also maybe it was just like a happy coincidence that I moved in with my brother for a little bit and the dog was there. But yeah, that also really helped me get out of it. Just having this dog there that I felt like was protecting me and was, was going to bark if something were to happen. And I stayed there for like a month. So that month is when I actually felt like I was really getting out of it.
Yeah. You're starting to feel like yourself again.
I was starting to feel like I was back to myself. Like I was, I was having the thoughts much less and it just wasn't a big part of my life anymore.
Wow.
Even though the thoughts would come and go, yeah. And I think also just having family, like my brother, my sister-in-law, dog, like it just felt like, I just felt like more protected and safe. And I think part of the reason why I started to begin with was that feeling of not being safe. I was living alone. I was kind of like near a forest. I didn't know anybody. I didn't know the language. So I'm like, I guess in the back of my mind, maybe I was having these thoughts that if something were to happen, I'm pretty much on my own. And maybe that's part of the reason why the insomnia started to begin with. Or yeah, part of the reason, maybe not the full reason. I don't know.
No, it makes sense because if we feel like at baseline a little bit kind of vulnerable, isolated, you just like we're more easily scared, and so it makes total sense.
Yeah.
Now, I want to ask you two more things, and one is, if you could go back and talk to yourself, you can pick like if you go back to 2013 or you back to 2022, or but when if you could travel back to a time where things were difficult, and you can tell yourself something, what would you tell yourself?
From the very beginning, don't distract yourself. Well, one thing that I did more than anything was I was trying to rationalize my way out of the situation, telling myself, this is ridiculous. No one's going to sneak in the house without you hearing them and chop your legs off. Like, come on. I mean, I was doing that so much and I was making myself feel guilty for even having these thoughts. So I was really beating myself up about even having these thoughts and telling myself that I'm never going to get better. So I would tell myself that you cannot rationalize your way out of emotion and you just have to accept it and that you will get better. That's what I would tell myself.
Yeah. So wise words. And finally, is there anything you learned from, leaving Somnophobia and Insomnia that you feel applies wider in life to other aspects of life?
Yeah, I think that it's so important to have, I tend to sometimes be a bit of a recluse, and I think that that's not healthy. I think that you need people. You need people around. You need to discuss things with others. You just need that human element in your life. You can't always be independent. You can't always fix everything on your own. And also just to not have shame when you're going through something difficult. Oftentimes we're embarrassed that we're having such a difficult experience, especially. And I think when it comes to something like sleep or somniphobia, it just seems so irrational that you're like, well, I shouldn't mention this because it's silly, like who has a hard time falling asleep? Like everyone, just it's something that you don't have to even think about. So why am I having this struggle? So just eliminate the shame, because really when you do that, you find that a lot of people can relate or they want to help. Like ever since going through this experience, my biggest goal now is to help anyone else that's gone through it, which is why I'm doing this interview. I would love to, if somebody reaches out to me and says, well, I'm going through this, my first instinct now is I want to help them. So yeah.
Amazing. It sounds so nice. And yeah, I have nothing else to add. I just want to say big thanks to you. Actually, first, like these, I want to kind of emphasize the shout outs. One big one to Malena. Thanks so much for helping.
Thank
and
you,
also and to the dog. That was so fun. I want to thank the dog there for helping as well. But with that said, yeah, thanks so much for being a guest today. And we'll be in touch. All right.
Yes, thank you so much.
Anytime.